Times I would have to follow in my mom's footsteps. Hey guys, we're going to camp out. We're going to live like it used to be in the old days. Power would be cut off.
Right.
But this is how they lived, in the little house on prairie day type
Right.
thing, so yeah, it was that kind of life.
Hey y'all, I'm your host, Brooke Pinchin. Welcome to God's Coffee Call, a place where there's always a fresh brewed conversation happening of personal testimony and life experiences. So grab a cup of coffee, pull a chair to the table, and join our conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to God's Coffee Call. I am your host, Brooke Pinchin, and today we have a very special guest here with us. Before we jump into that, I just want to invite you to join the family here at God's Coffee Call. As simply as hitting that subscribe button, and you will get notifications anytime we post a new podcast, anytime we go live, anytime we post anything here at God's Coffee Call, you will get a notification. Also, if this is your first time here, welcome. So glad you were here. We have a variety of different videos for you to watch. If you watch them, like them, subscribe to them, get the word out of what God's doing here at God's Coffee Call. If it's blessed you, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, how we can do it better, whatever you need to say. We just pray that in these moments with God's Coffee Call, that your life is forever changed. And so, speaking of lives forever changed, about 2 years ago, I think now, this lady and her family came into my life. This is my very special friend, Miss Johnette. And I met you under the big blue tent, which we've talked about several times in some episodes. We had a revival come to our city, and I met your family there, and there was no looking back. And I kept hearing about, you got to meet Miss Johnette. You got to meet their family. You got to meet the Dotys. They're phenomenal. And the day I met you guys, it was like just meeting, I don't know how else to explain it except for like a hug of the Father on the earth. Like you and your family just carry this sweetness and this presence about you that I'm like, everybody needs somebody in this family to be in their life. Like that's just how I felt. And God just kind of brought you and I together. And I call her the Paula Deen of my life because this is her beautiful house that you're only seeing parts of. But the rest of it is magazine worthy for real. I just want to come and sit and like when I was writing my book, I'm like, can I just come sit in your living room and write my book? Can I come sit on your porch and write my book? Because it just feels like a place of peace and the presence of the Lord in this room. So Miss Johnette, will you just kind of tell us a little bit about you? You can start at the beginning at your childhood and just let's just have a conversation. We'll see where the Lord takes us today. So go for it.
Well, I was born literally in Amite and in the town. And the story goes with my mom. Of course, we lived there my whole life, but she says that my older sister wanted a real live baby for Christmas. So she literally had me on the 23rd of December.
Wow.
At Shirori's Clinic was the name of the place in Amite. And brought me home, hid me in a closet, and for Christmas Eve. And Christmas morning, she stuck me under the Christmas tree. So my older sister had a real live baby.
I cannot. That is the best ever.
So, which, of course, by that summer, she was trying to bury me in the sandbox.
She's like, forget this, take this baby doll back.
But it was a home of just 3 girls, me being the youngest. And my mom was not from this area. She was actually from Kentucky. And so when she and my father met, as I said earlier, he was in Kentucky for Bible college, and she was modeling on the corner there in front of the Kentucky Derby.
Okay.
And he happened to pass, and that their paths crossed, and then they decided to marry, and he brought her to Louisiana.
Okay. So they
Yes.
both were from here. Or she was from Kentucky.
She was
he
from
was from here.
Kentucky.
He was from here.
Amy.
Okay.
Yes,
All
he was
right.
from Amy.
Got you.
And so that's how we got back to Louisiana.
Okay.
Mom said she never wanted to raise her babies in Louisville. She said
Okay.
it was a dirty. She compared it to New Orleans.
Okay.
You know,
Got you.
just bigger
Got you.
version. So,
Okay.
so she raised us there. She was a beautician. I remember going to beauty school actually with her. You know, she would put us in the classroom upstairs while she was downstairs, you know, working on clients or whatever. I just remember
Yeah.
being up there. And at that time, you know, they would allow that because she
Right.
didn't have a babysitter. And then she opened her shop. As far as my father, I remember childhood-wise, I remember he worked, but very vaguely. I didn't really know what he did. He and his brothers had a tractor company.
Okay.
And I don't know if say the name of the tractor company, but they had a location in Hammond and one in Kentwood. And he worked at the one in Kentwood. And so yeah, but I didn't really know, we didn't farm, you know, so I really didn't, and being a girl, we didn't have any brothers, I really
Right.
didn't know what that entailed. Childhood wise, I remember where I started remembering was we stayed at my aunts and uncles a lot. And they would bring us to church, you know, every time the doors opened, they'd have us at the church. But the reason we stayed with them was because my father was in, at that point, Mandeville Nut House, as my mom always called it, the crazy house. He was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic with manic depression.
Now, let me stop you there. Did she know that when they were in Kentucky? Did she know that he had those issues?
How she told us this came about was, and again, I was a baby, when they lived in Baton Rouge. He worked at a refinery in Baton Rouge. I was born, so, you know, she had the 3 girls, but again, I was small. And she said that I had to have been maybe 1, 2 years old then, because she said it was around Christmas. And he called her and said, hey, I got off work. Some of the guys, you know, we all got bonuses, and some of the guys want to go out. And he said, so I'm going to go with them, and I'll be home later. Which, when she told me the story, I never remember my father, even with his mental problems, drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol was not something that was ever really in our house.
Got you.
That I remember. I mean, if it was, I never saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't, you know, an issue. So when Mom told me that, I'm like, well, okay, that's, you know, okay, that must have been a first. But anyway, she said that it got later and later, and he never came home. And so in the morning, the next morning, when she went out, she found him in the front yard.
Mm.
He had no wallet,
Wow.
which hence no money,
Right.
no Christmas bonus.
No bonus.
And he was out of it.
Mm.
And from there, that's when it was like something triggered in his head. That is what she's told us. You know, the doctors figured that that's what happened, that triggered this mental
Whatever
illness.
it was.
Because what they figured was someone had slipped him a Mickey.
Okay. Which is like a drug or something.
Yeah,
right.
I'm like, okay, I didn't know what a Mickey was.
Right.
You know, we didn't have drugs in the house either.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And he played football in high school. So they're thinking between head injury with football and this Mickey that someone slipped him is what triggered.
There was just this thing that just, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a story
just
I
that
was always
simple.
told.
Wow.
Something that simple. Yeah.
God.
Which altered his life and our
Right.
lives forever, you know.
Yeah.
But so he wasn't really, you know, we weren't really close to him. He was a big man. I remember him hollering a lot. My mom and dad fought a lot. And, you know, so it wasn't a really quiet home, you know. It was like almost every 8 to 10 years that he would flip out. my mom hid a lot of it from us, but we'd hear the stories. Like I said, we were always at our aunts and
Gotcha.
uncles, and I thank God for them.
Yeah.
They had 5 children of their own, plus they fostered a lot of children. And so we were just kind of like fostered with them
Yeah.
too.
The Lord brings blessings
Yes,
that we
he
don't
did.
even know about, right?
He did.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, they got us to church. And so that kind of, that's a childhood I remember. I do remember, that we had fun, laughing times,
Mhm.
because I remember a black Volkswagen that he had.
Mhm.
Now he's a big man, so I don't know why he got a Volkswagen, but we would take it in the back field of the property, and that's how, we learned to drive
Right.
a standard.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
of course he'd throw a fit, but it was one in those times that he was,
Right.
out of it.
Yeah.
He'd be in the bed sleeping, because when he was home, I just remember him being in the bed sleeping.
Gotcha.
Mom had a beauty shop right there in the house, so she was right there with us.
Gotcha.
And of course, going back and forth to school and all, she was still right there.
Now you said they met at Bible college. So did he graduate from this seminary?
No, he never actually graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nothing. He knew the Bible. He would
Right.
quote it to
Did he
us
go
all
to
the
church with
time.
you guys, or just when you guys went with
No,
your
he
aunt
would.
and stuff?
It was a very strict belief, and yes, we were to go in and we sat down and we had to be quiet. And girls, kids, we played.
Right.
And we always, every Sunday, we'd get a thump on top of the head because we were making too much noise.
All right.
So we were to sit there, be quiet, and go through it.
Yeah.
So to say yes, I was introduced to the Bible and to God, but it wasn't to me, it was in a almost begrudging way, because it was like, okay, it was a lot of don'ts. You can't do this, you can't do that.
A lot of
you can't-
religion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was very
laws,
much.
yeah.
So it kind of put a sour taste.
Okay. Rightly so.
But I was still drawn.
Yeah.
To the Lord. And anyway, so that's pretty much our childhood. Even going to school, I was on the dance team at school.
Okay.
And so I had my outings, but my mom never came to a game, any function we did, not on any of us, my father. So it wasn't like we were active in that, but I thought that was normal.
Right.
I just thought that was just a normal life. I did not think I had a horrible childhood, or, it was anything out of the ordinary.
Right.
We'd go on family picnics, but it was at the Fontainebleau Park, which was across from the mental hospital. But we just thought it as outings, know. And so
which is like kudos to your mom, right?
Yeah.
Kudos to mom, because that's what moms do, and that's what parents should do, is protect our kids from the stuff of the world. And even though she was probably going through the hardest thing of her life, not understanding, not figuring it out, knowing enough to like keep you guys safe and make it as fun as she could, that you remember the good times over. I mean, not that we don't remember the bad times, but that those good times outweigh the bad. So just kind of walk us through that.
Right.
That's
and
awesome.
I remember him volunteering one year. I think I might have been 11 years old. And just thinking about the building of a house and where we were at that time. And he got in with the fire department, not working there, but they asked him to dress up as Santa Claus one year. And so he would go, so he was very active. Everyone loved him, and he was very lovable to everyone. We just really didn't get that at home.
Gotcha.
And so, I can remember he'd go and, he'd be telling, I could hear him telling other people, he'd go to this house and they'd have this many children, and they'd sit on his lap, and then he'd give them a candy cane, and
Right.
so we thought, oh, we could get that too. We have our own, it's kind of cool.
Right,
we have our own Santa Claus.
Yeah.
But we didn't get to sit on his lap.
Wow.
And, we had broken candy canes. Here's leftovers. So,
Why do you think that was? Why do you think that was?
I don't
if you
know.
have an answer.
I don't know, but and again, nothing against my mom, but she did I do remember her many times telling us that our father never wanted children. He really never wanted, you know.
Got
So,
you. Maybe it was a
you
little
know,
bit of
maybe that
that.
was part. I don't know.
Got you.
I don't really know.
Right.
But
So,
it wasn't a closeness than
right.
that.
So how did that begin to affect you as you got a little older, like as a teenage? Like because you said you're the youngest. Were your sisters still there? Are you there by yourself? Like what does teenage years look like for you?
Teenage was Paula, my older sister. She was, I want to say, 11th grade, and nothing against her because she's a wonderful teacher. She's awesome now because she did get a GED. But out of the 11th grade, she got married. She was just wanting to get out of the house,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Right.
and
Yeah.
married, and they moved right down the road. So she, like I said, she was out, and then when my middle sister, when Dara got married, it might have been a year later, and then she gets married. So that kind of it was just kind of all happening,
Right.
boom, boom, boom. But again, it wasn't really. We loved each other, but
Mhm.
there really we never. I sit back and look at it. Really, to have that sister bond,
Mhm.
we were all just kind of surviving.
Right. I mean, you've got trauma all
Yeah,
around you. If
we're
they
just
were,
all surviving.
so we're so yeah.
And so, so then Dara's trying to make, her life and her
Right.
going. So that did put me there by myself,
Right.
for a very short time. I dealt a lot with rejection, being unloved, is what I felt
Right.
from that. Not realizing really at that point though, because like I said, we were just living life.
Right.
We thought. But I did in high school. I want to say it was my ninth year, ninth or 10th grade. I'm trying to remember. I started dating a guy, and like I think it was over a year
Okay.
that we dated. And we talked marriage. We talked, his family had a little house in the country. We were setting it up, getting things done, and because wanting to be loved, wanting to be, I just thought that was it. He was just, my, as they call, first love.
Right.
But it was someone that showed me attention,
Right.
someone that, took time with
Mhm.
me and seemed to care. And his family, I adored his mom, and his dad had passed, so it was just his mom and sisters and grandmother. So there was that relationship, and we were not being feeling like I was loved or anything. It ended up bad choice, but it ended up being intimate,
Right.
and so then when Mark and Dara got married, this guy broke it off. And I had no idea why did just cut and dry. I don't want to be together anymore.
Right.
And I thought, wow, what did I do? So here was another form of rejection. Not knowing, having a clue, which I learned, a year later or so, that whenever Mark and Dara got married, he got scared.
Got you.
And, that I might get pregnant or something, and so that was the only way he knew to deal with it. But that was God, because, he knew that was not the person for me.
Right.
But in that rejection, I went on the rebound. That was about the same time that I walked in on the scene where my dad was choking my mom and, quoting, did he need to kill her or not? And I'm, panicking and having to call, the police to come and get him, because not knowing if my mom's going to be killed or not, so
Right.
all this is going on.
All this trauma just building on
It's
top
just
of it,
on
on top of it,
top, on
top
top.
of it.
And so in the rebound of being rejected, and then this with home life, being the only one there, catching it,
Right.
a lot, I ended up with my children's father, which was someone I would have never chose. It was just he was there,
Right.
And actually, let me back up. It was his cousin that asked me out. And I knew him well. I didn't know this little fellow. I knew him well. And his cousin got a severe case of poison ivy during the week. And I didn't know it. But when it come that Friday night or Saturday night, whatever night, when it come time for the date, because he'd asked me on a date,
Right.
he sent his cousin because he didn't want to stand me up.
Oh, well, I mean, that's
You
sweet.
know, and
Right.
I thought, oh,
Okay,
okay,
right.
but I don't know who you are. I didn't know.
Right, right.
So we went and we talked a lot. And I mean, at that point, he's trying to give me his high school ring.
Oh,
And yeah,
on the first date.
on the first date. And
Okay.
I'm like, no, I don't want it. No, don't you like it? Put it on, put it on. And then when I go to hand it back to him,
Mm.
he's like, well, no, you keep it. I said, well, I don't want it. If you don't, I remember those words. If you don't keep it, I'm going to go jump off the river bridge and kill myself.
Whoa.
To which I took it literally because what I was already in.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my God, this guy, oh my God, I'll be responsible. I mean,
How you lay that on somebody?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I should have run.
Yeah, over that red flags everywhere, right?
Huh. And then, like I said, and all this other going on at the house.
The art of manipulation
Yeah.
at its finest.
Yes. And my father was, once again, put in the hospital. And so my mom thought we needed, and this all was in just seems like just weeks, it wasn't no time. My mom said, well, we really need a guy around. And so hence lets this guy come and stay with me and my mom because she felt like we needed.
Wow.
So one thing led to another. Well, I ended up pregnant.
How old were you?
I was, was I 16?
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you get married,
Right.
And you don't divorce.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, no, this is life's choice. And I said, well, that was it. I knew it's time. There was no other option. And so we go through the motions of getting married. And I remember, it was just kind of like at this point, and when I look back at it now, I kind of was just going through motion of everything. It wasn't a big to-do wedding. I had my best friend stand as maid of honor. He had his cousin stand as best man, and that was it. We got married at a small little country church we did not go to. The only reason, it was right down the road from our house. I loved the little church. I refused to get married in that big religious church that both my sisters had gotten married in,
Right.
because it wasn't me. I wanted just this little country church, and the
Right.
pastor agreed to do it, marry us. And I remember riding with him, with their dad, my kid's dad. I rode together with him to the church. My mom's freaking out, you got to have everything ready. Oh, it'll be fine. It was kind of fly by night thing.
Mhm.
I just was going through motions. And I remember standing in the bathroom of the church with my best friend, my maid of honor at that point, even now, we're still friends. And she looks at me. I'm standing there looking in the mirror, and she looks at me and she says, are you sure you want to go through with this?
Mm.
And I never answered her, but my thought was, no, I do not, but I don't have a choice.
Mm.
And so just a few years ago, I told her, I said, I never answered that question, but I'll answer it now, and so
Right.
I told her. She said, I knew you
Yeah.
didn't. I said, no, but I didn't feel like I had a choice.
But if you look back over all of that, your mom had taught you just to go through the motions,
Mhm.
right? Because she was doing the best that she can,
Yeah.
and trying to compartmentalize all of that on her
Mhm.
end, be a mom, be a beautician, be a wife, all these things, just walking through those motions. We just don't even realize how much we pick up from that. So, and my mom and I talked about that when we did our interview, the things that she kind of, her insecurities, she didn't even realize was teaching me. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized, hey, I picked up some of these insecurities that really aren't really insecurities of mine, but because they're yours, I just natural for me to pick them up. And so it's so interesting when we look back and think about the things that we walk through, how our lives just are so shaped and molded by our surroundings and our families and our homes, right? Okay, so
I'm at the church,
Yeah.
And I've said no, I did not want to myself. I never told her the answer. But at that point, my thoughts in my head were, you got to make the best of this. This is your life. This is what what's been at you, thrown at you, and you just got to make the best of it. So I remember standing in the foyer of that little church. And of course, my father's there. He's walking me down the aisle. I don't remember anyone there. I don't really remember even seeing, I knew my mom was there, but I don't remember. I literally don't remember any of that. But at before they opened the door for me to walk through, I remember kicking my shoes off, throwing them to the side, and my thought was, okay, let's do this. Here we go.
Wow.
And so, that's how it started, which is not ideal.
Right.
And it was not, it wasn't the perfect at all marriage. But I had my first daughter. She was a little girl. I had her. Now, let me back up. I had just finished the 11th grade. Okay. So we got married that May, which I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And so I'm determined at this point, and like I said, no discredit to either one of my sisters because they have done fabulous. They've moved on. Right, they've gotten their education,
Right.
But at that point, this was my determination.
Right.
Neither one of my sisters had graduated.
Gotcha.
And here I was out of the 11th grade, married, I had Kelly in November. But when school got married in May, so when school come around, this is going to be my senior year.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to graduate. I have to walk cap and gown.
Right.
Because Mama hadn't had any of us, and that was a big thing to her.
Right.
And like I said, no discredit to either one of my sisters because they have since done and gone and done great, gotten their diploma. But for me, at that point, it was, I have no choice. I've got to come back to school.
Yeah.
So when school rolled around to start, here I am with a belly, and I'm going to go to school. And I remember meeting with my counselor at school, and she said, there's no way you're going to graduate with your class because you're going to have this baby, you're going to miss so many, this and that. I thought, oh, so when I left out of it, I thought, oh yeah, I will. And so I think that was, I don't know if she was doing a reverse thing on me as far as that, but I was more determined even so.
Yeah.
And to be in the classroom every day, it was tough.
Right.
So I thought, so I started night school.
Okay.
And I ended up with taking the GED test. But when my senior class walked that next year in May, because I was back and forth, connected still with the school, I walked with my class.
That's awesome.
And actually I was pregnant with my second when I did it.
Okay. All right.
Because baby 1 and baby 2 are 11 months apart.
Wow.
And so I thought, Lord, what are you doing to me? But I did graduate. Actually, I remember walking cap and gown on that football field, and the principal, he was awesome, Mr. Richardson. He was an awesome man. And he, me being back and forth, and he knew my situation. He was very supportive. And I remember him before he gave me my diploma. He said, okay, before I hand this, and now we're on football field, he's got the mic.
In front of everybody.
In front of everybody.
God and everybody.
He said, I just want y'all to realize. And see, no one knew I was pregnant. I didn't, very few knew. And
with your second one.
With my
obviously.
second.
You're right.
They knew I had the one.
The first, the one, yeah.
And he announced it. He said, I want to let y'all know that no one has any excuse for not finishing school.
Wow.
He said, this girl has, and not patting myself on the back, because I'm sitting there going, just give me my
Please let me go.
diploma. Please let me go. I had no idea he was going to do that. He said, not only has she finished, he said she's top 10 of her class.
Wow.
He said, but she's got a husband and a baby in them stands. He said, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe she's going to have another baby. And I thought,
Oh, wow.
please. And he, of course, to which he hugged me, but I'm like, well, now the whole world knows.
Now the whole world. Surprise.
So, yes. So my
Okay.
first two were, and again, I was 16. My birthday was in December. Remember, I'm a Christmas baby.
Right.
So I had Kelly at 16. The next month I turned 17. Ricky, my second child, was born in October. I was 17. When he was 5 months old, I found out I was pregnant with a third child.
Wow.
And I knew it was God because definitely was God. Jeremy tells me all the time I tried to abort him. I'm like, no, I did not. But we were in an accident. I had just Ricky. Kelly was at home and taking a nap, and her dad was there with her. So Ricky and I was going to the grocery store. And I remember he was 5 months old. That was those car seats that hung over the back of the seat.
Yeah.
Very safe.
Yeah.
He was in it, and we weren't but 2 blocks from the house. And as I'm leaving out, going down the parking lot, you know how people cut across parking lots?
Right.
Well, if you ever in a car with me in a parking lot, you will know I'm still to this day.
Don't cut across parking.
Don't cut across parking lots. Because as soon as I came clear of the aisle I was on, I saw a car shooting across the parking lot. And it hit me broadside, right at the door on the driver's side, and flipped me in that parking lot. The car
In
was
the parking lot.
in the parking lot. Wow. And I did not realize the car was flipped, but I just remember seeing this little opening and someone's hands reaching in, and I laid Ricky in their hands.
Wow.
And then they pulled me out. And I remember sitting on the cement looking at the car going, oh, it's not too bad. But I'm looking at the passenger side.
Got you.
And I'm so out of it, I didn't realize the wheels are spinning. The car's on its roof.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my pelvis was fractured in 3 places.
Wow.
And I thought, so I was on crutches.
Yeah.
Ricky's at one hospital. He had a head concussion, and I'm at another hospital, which, of course, my mom, my sisters, they all had to, pitch in. They had to take care of of Kelly, my oldest baby. And, me and Ricky are in the hospitals. And anyway, now it's going to get a little personal here, but it's okay because it's part of my story. After my pelvis being fractured, I'm getting out of the hospital. I never had a cycle. I thought, so I call my doctor. We go in, we do a pregnancy test. It's negative. He says, but because of the trauma to your body, because it was right about that time, he said, that's probably what's going on. Let me give you, it was some little pill, try to bring it on, get you a jump start. I said, okay. So I took them. Nothing happened. 5 days later, I'm calling back and I'm talking to I said, give me something stronger. He said, no, you have to come back in, and let's take another test. Now,
and did they do like ultrasounds and stuff back then?
I never
didn't
had
think
an
so.
ultrasound on my
Okay,
babies
I didn't think
then,
so.
no. But you've got to realize the situation. I lived in Amite, or we lived in Amite. My doctor was in Baton Rouge at the Women's Hospital. I had 2 babies, and I'm on crutches because my pelvis is fractured.
Yeah.
So we go in there, and I have my babies with me. My mom is there, bless her heart. And we go in, and they do another pregnancy test. And they call me in his office, and I'm sitting there with him. Okay, Lottie, you got to get down.
Lottie's leaving us, everybody. Lottie's had enough.
I'm sitting there with him, and he says, well, it's positive. The test is positive. I said, well, positive for what? He said, you're pregnant. I'm like, Well, there's no way. I mean, because my pelvis was fractured. So
Yeah.
I was pregnant before the wreck.
Wow. That's
And so, but I remember my doctor saying, you wouldn't consider, and he could not even say the word abortion.
Yeah.
And I knew I had a good doctor then.
yeah.
And I remember looking at him and I said, no, I don't care if this was my 12th child. No, I would never do that. He said, good, because I couldn't do it either.
Right.
And so I start that pregnancy on crutches
With a broke pelvis.
with a fractured pelvis
Fractured
in 3
pelvis.
places, not just one. And I ended that pregnancy on crutches
Wow.
because it hadn't,
right had healed in this
had
process.
time to heal. So when the pressure of the baby dropping, I ended up back on crutches. So
Wow.
Jeremy was definitely
A miracle.
meant to be,
Yeah.
and he is a miracle.
Definitely. Wow.
And yes, that was the last
Gotcha.
baby because I was 19
with 3.
in that December, and I had him in February. So I was just 2 months into being 19 years old. Wow. And yes, I had 3. But God.
But God. That's
But
wild
God.
to me.
You know.
What, so speaking of God, where were you at with God in the middle of all this? Like you're not obviously not still going to your aunts and stuff because you're married with kids. Like, were you and the kids and your spouse going to church, or where were we at in
Yes,
that?
we actually, he wasn't one that went to church a lot. And so he was kind of just flip-flop, whatever, and wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do. And so my older sister was going to a church in Hammond. And so we just started there, and the kids were, of course they were little, but that's where. And so, yes, we were still going to church the whole time.
Gotcha.
But it was an in and out marriage. We'd be together and then we'd be apart for several months. And then so it wasn't a strong marriage. We were kids,
Right.
literally we were kids, and so it was very rocky.
How long were y'all married?
We were actually on paper married 10 years.
Okay.
But 2 of those years several we weren't together, but a solid 2 years we weren't. The last
together.
2 years we weren't together.
Gotcha.
And that's a sweet story in itself too, because and of course we moved around a good bit, with his jobs, and then, he decided, he got on a good job with the phone company, and we moved to Mississippi, Tylertown, Mississippi. And I'm going to tell you, in that time, again, you're just going through the motions. I really felt like we'd come home because we were still going to church in Hammond, even though we lived in Tylertown, Mississippi.
Right. Oh.
But I really felt like when I crossed over that state line, I could be my own person. I could be me. Other than that, when I'd come back into Louisiana, back home,
Mm-hmm.
I had to be what everybody wanted me to be.
Gotcha.
And I really contribute that as well. My mom
Mm-hmm.
was that. She hid a lot from us. She laughed a lot of things off, and just whatever, she thought
Right.
we needed, that's what she was.
Gotcha.
So it was really hard for her to be her true self.
Yeah.
And that was just because of her circumstances. I don't
Right.
blame her for that at all,
No.
And
Yeah.
but I do remember when we lived in Mississippi that, crossing that state line, I could be me. Okay, now I'm me,
Okay.
And it wasn't like I was a big different person, but
Right.
it was just I had an identity.
And not the pressure of all these eyes looking at
Yeah.
me, making sure. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
understandable. It's understandable for
because
sure.
I did have 3 little ones, and I was a kid myself.
Yeah.
And at this point, when we lived over there, Jeremy was 3, so they were 3, 4, and 5. So they were little, but I look back now, I'm thinking, how did I do that?
Yeah.
Only by the grace of God did I do that.
Yeah.
But we were still going to church. We would drive, like I said, might be in Mississippi, but home was still, I worked at a little grocery store. That was another thing. Their dad didn't really care to work.
Okay.
And so our marriage, he worked off and on. Paying bills wasn't a priority.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of times I would have to follow in my mom's footsteps. Hey guys, we're going to camp out. We're going to live like it used to be in the old days. Power would be cut off.
Right.
But this is how they lived, in the little house on prairie day type
Right.
thing, so yeah, it was that kind of life, and
So repeating patterns, maybe in different ways and stuff, but
Yeah.
definitely
a
repeating
repeated
those
pattern.
patterns.
Yes. By no one's choice. I mean, it was a choice I made.
Right.
Because I did not, again, divorce wasn't an option for me.
And even back then, like back in that day, divorce was frowned upon. It was looked down upon.
And my enough of having church in me and God in me, it was like, no, this
Right.
is like for better. I took that commitment seriously.
Yeah.
And so it was like I wasn't going to divorce. That wasn't my option.
Yeah.
And even as bad as things would get. But their dad, the kid's dad, he wasn't abusive to me. He smoked. I didn't, but he smoked. And he really didn't drink. So it wasn't like I had that.
Yeah.
He just wasn't a support as far as, providing.
Gotcha.
And but I don't, like I said, I don't know where that came from. I just know that's
Right.
what we dealt a lot
Right.
with. I'd go to my mom a lot for groceries and, a lot of things. If I needed diapers, they didn't have, I remember getting on WIC,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't really have programs
Right.
then
Yeah.
that they do now.
Gotcha.
Or I'd have been on all of them.
Yeah. I mean, rightly so
All
with
of
all
them.
those kids. Yeah.
But I do remember we were living when we're in Tylertown, and the kids they weren't in school, they weren't yet school age. So we're in the backyard, and it's a fenced-in backyard, and we're playing. And I remember I looked up and I see this man standing at my gate, and just looking at us. I thought, oh. So I walked over there and said, "Can I help you?" And I remember his words. He says, "Ma'am, I don't know what kind of game you're playing." I'm like, "Well, I'm playing with my kids." He said, "No, you haven't paid a house note in over 6 months."
Oh, I have.
And he's handing me
wow.
a notice to get out. I said, "What?" Again, that's what the husband takes care of bills.
Wow.
But he wasn't. And I'm like, oh gosh. So that was a shocker.
Yeah. To say the least.
And so we pack up and we move. And we come back. Well, at that point, his grandmother, her house had become open, and was vacant. And so the uncle, said, "Y'all, yes." He knew me and the kids, and the day he said, "No, y'all go ahead and move in there." So we moved in the grandmother's house.
Okay.
And we're all good there, and back and forth, but to church. And at this point, I am. We've moved to a church in Amite, and their dad would go sometimes with me, sometimes he wouldn't, but it was mainly me and the kids, would go. So that was always my foundation.
Right.
And God placed me in positions as far as work.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, Dad was off and on working. So I was working. I would start my morning at the daycare, where, of course, my kids weren't in school yet. So they were at the daycare. Well, at this point, I think Jeremy was the only one in daycare. The other two had started. Well, the daycare was the daycare was a school, preschool as well. And so, but I worked there. So I didn't have to pay,
Yeah.
So that was God. That was God.
Yeah.
I would work there till lunch. And then I would go to a little grocery store. The sweet, sweet family in Tangipahoa had a little small grocery store. And I'd go to work there at the grocery store. And this was God too. At that point, I didn't, as you look back now, you see it.
Right.
Because Miss Margaret, the lady who owned the grocery store, her and her husband, she was very frugal. She did not waste anything.
Mm-hmm.
If meat was in the meat counter and it was getting to where it was needing to be sold or whatever, she'd put it in the freezer. So it was still good till,
Right.
and some people would buy it out of there, but ever so often she would go and empty that freezer and send it home. Say,
Wow.
here, Johnette, take this.
Wow.
I knew what was coming on sale the
Right.
week next, following, so I could kind of program things. So God he stretched what little bit I made.
Yeah.
So my kids were fed.
Small little moments, little miracles along the
those
way.
little nuggets. So not, like I said, at that point, I was just surviving, but it was God.
Yeah.
When I look back, it was God taking care. And fast forward, we're in this house and the kids, I think we might have been there right at a year or so, but the kids are fixing to start school, and because the school year is coming up, and they're enrolled, they're going to go to school. And I don't know if we were gone to church or where we had gone somewhere, but we came home and there was this envelope on the door. And of course, I'm at the door first and I get it and I open it and it's a letter stating how they've been patient and kind, and but there's other cousins that could benefit as well, and it's not fair that we're not paying rent. And I thought, oh, what? Here we go again. And basically, it was an eviction notice that the uncle had wrote, and the aunt, because it was just the two siblings at this point. The kids' she had passed, so it was just the two siblings. And it was an eviction notice. And oh, God. So when their dad came up, I said, look, and he reads it. And I'm in shock. I'm getting the kids in, getting them ready for bed, and just not knowing, well, what am I going to do? School starts in a week.
Yeah.
Am I going to be here? Do I need to enroll them in a different school?
Right.
How do I move? All this.
Mom stuff.
That's mom stuff.
Figuring
mom
it
stuff.
out. Yeah.
And so anyway, I remember sitting on the couch. The kids were in their room playing. I'm going, what do I do? And their dad came in and he sat down beside me. And I look at him. I said, what are we going to do? And if my children watch this, Jeremy knows this because I told him just a couple weeks ago. But I don't know that my other children know this. But surprise. Because I was just not a parent that ever down talked their dad because it would only hurt them.
Right.
I hate it when parents do that when they divorce. But anyway, when he sat down beside me and I'm asking, what are we going to do? And he looked at me and he said, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't want to. I don't want to be a husband. I don't want to be a dad. I don't want to be a provider. I'm leaving and going north.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
That was kind of my...
like crickets, like,
What?
Come again for me?
And he got up. And now, mind you, we were back, the marriage was rocky anyway, okay? But I wasn't going to leave. That was my life.
Right.
And he got up and he went in the bedroom. He got a bag of clothes and he walked out the door.